I've been a mortuary makeup artist for nearly 8 years. In this big city, appearances are expected to be maintained, even after someone's final breath. There's a standard. The skin should look fresh, lips slightly tinted, hands clean and orderly. I never questioned it, until the day I met her. That morning, the air was heavy with a faint mist when an old ambulance pulled up in front of the funeral home where I worked. An elderly woman, maybe in her 70s, lay still on the stretcher. Her skin was pale, marked with the soft lines of age. There was no trace of makeup on her face, just a simple white burial cloth wrapped around her body. The family, who brought her in, felt different from our usual visitors. They came from a remote village, about 4 hours from the city. Her daughter, a woman in her mid-50s, gripped my hand tightly before I took the body to the preparation room. "She made a request," she whispered, voice rough and trembling. "Please, don't put makeup on her. Leave her as she is." I nodded, taking her words to heart. I gave them my word. It didn't seem like a difficult promise to keep. Not every family wants their loved one to look like a showroom mannequin. I respected that. But that afternoon, the funeral home manager approached me. "There will be many important guests tomorrow," he said with a heavy sigh. "We still have to maintain standards. We can't display a body just like that. This is the city, after all." I hesitated. I tried to refuse, repeating the family's request, but the pressure from above was too strong. Maybe, I thought, just a little powder. Just enough so her skin wouldn't look too pale under the bright lights. As evening fell, I gave in. I gently applied a light layer of foundation, shaped her brows, added a touch of neutral lip balm. Nothing excessive, just presentable, I told myself. But still, I had broken the promise. That night, I went home with a strange sense of guilt. But what followed went far beyond guilt. The next morning, when I returned to the preparation room to do a final check before the funeral, something felt off. The vanity table, usually fixed firmly against the wall, had shifted, angled about 30 degrees. I assumed maybe the cleaning staff had moved it, though that rarely happened. But what truly made my skin crawl was the makeup palette I'd used. I remembered sealing it tightly. But that morning, the contents were damp, fresh, as if someone had just dipped a brush into it. Tiny droplets pooled around the edges. I felt uneasy, but tried to stay rational. Maybe it was just moisture. Maybe a leak, I thought. I cleaned everything up and put it all back in place. But the next night, it happened again. The vanity had shifted. The makeup palette was wet. And this time the brushes, dry the day before, were soaked and scattered, as if someone had been using them. I began to feel afraid. I decided to check the CCTV footage that faced the preparation room. In the footage from that night, around 3 a.m, I saw a figure, a woman. She was standing still, her hair long, her white cloth tattered and worn. She stood directly behind the mirror, as if gazing at the reflection on the other side. But the strange thing was, there was no sign of her entering. No doors opened. She didn't walk in. She was just there, motionless, until the footage faded into the light of day. I trembled. I had spent years working closely with the dead. I wasn't someone who frightened easily. But this was different. I knew then I had crossed a line. I had done something I wasn't supposed to. The days that followed only grew heavier. Every night, the same things happened again. I began to sense her presence, even when I wasn't watching the footage. There were whispers, soft, almost imperceptible, right by my ear whenever I was alone, and a deep, unnatural cold that pierced through the skin. I confided in an old friend, another mortuary makeup artist. She came from a distant village and was more familiar with traditional customs. "You need to understand something," she said firmly. "Some people don't want to be adorned. It's not about beauty. It's about respect. They wish to return to the earth as themselves, not as painted dolls." Her words struck me deep. I felt ashamed, and I knew I had to make it right. Overwhelmed by a growing sense of unease, I decided to return to my grandmother's village. I needed time to calm myself, and perhaps ask for forgiveness, though I wasn't sure how. At her house, I shared everything. My grandmother listened in silence, her face somber. "Do you understand your mistake?" she asked gently. I nodded. I forced what I believed was good, without honoring her last request. She looked at me for a long time, then offered a faint smile. "Good. Learn to listen. Not all cultures seek beauty. Sometimes what's needed is sincerity, respect. Let people go in peace." On the third day in the village, I felt something shift. The cold no longer followed me. The whispers faded. When I returned to the funeral home a week later, the CCTV showed nothing unusual. The vanity stayed in place. The makeup palette was dry. But I knew that didn't mean she was gone. I believe she's still there, watching. But she's no longer angry, because I've learned to listen. Since then, I've held a new principle in my work. I never go against someone's final wishes, no matter how small. Because behind every still face, there is a will, a story, a dignity that must be honored. And sometimes, the most important thing isn't making them look beautiful for the world, but helping them leave in peace. This is another story from my time as a mortuary makeup artist. After years in this profession, I began to realize that every body carries an unspoken story. And sometimes, it's not just their presence that lingers, but the atmosphere they leave behind. There was a moment that made me rethink a small habit of mine. The final spray of perfume. Not because I wanted to stop doing it, but because, for the first time, that scent came back to me. In a place and time where it didn't belong. Everything started as usual. Until one day, I received the body of a young woman. She couldn't have been much older than me, perhaps mid-20s. Her face was beautiful, but there was a sadness in her expression that even death couldn't hide. I read the notes from the hospital. She had died under tragic circumstances. For a moment, I froze. Bodies like this, they always weighed on me a little more. There was a kind of silence around her, a stillness that felt painfully alive. I prepared her gently. Her skin was pale, her lips delicate. I didn't want to make her look too cheerful. I just wanted her to look at peace. And at the end, like always, I picked up my little bottle of perfume. A soft blend of jasmine and eucalyptus. Light. Subtle. I sprayed it gently onto the cloth near her shoulder. Once. Twice. "I hope you can leave in peace," I whispered. After the funeral was over, life went on as usual. I went home, took a shower, prepared dinner. But that night, something felt off. As I stepped into the bathroom, a familiar scent hit me. The exact same perfume I had used at the funeral home, jasmine and eucalyptus. At first, I thought maybe it had lingered on my clothes, but I had already showered. I was wearing clean clothes. I brushed it off, told myself not to overthink it. But the next day, as I stepped into the elevator of my apartment, the scent returned, stronger this time, as if someone had just sprayed it in the air. I looked around. No one was there, just me. Day by day, the scent kept reappearing, in strange places, in my closet, on uniforms I hadn't even worn, inside my car, down the hallway outside my door. And sometimes, I would catch a glimpse of a woman, just a shadow, standing behind me, still, not moving, not threatening, just there, then gone. At first I thought it was all in my head. Maybe I was just too caught up in guilt or lingering sympathy. Maybe I hadn't fully let go. But the more often the scent appeared, the more I knew. This wasn't just in my mind. I began to feel unsettled, restless. Sleep became difficult, because every time the perfume returned, so did a feeling of deep, aching loneliness. Not fear, but sorrow. As if someone was still trying to be remembered. Someone who didn't feel seen. Someone who, even in death, still longed to matter. A week later, I returned to the funeral home to prepare another body. In the hallway outside the preparation room, I came across a middle-aged woman. Her face was tired, her eyes swollen from crying. She introduced herself softly. She was the mother of the young woman I had prepared the week before. We spoke quietly, gently, and in the middle of our conversation, I found myself asking a question I hadn't planned to say out loud. "Ma'am, did your daughter happen to have a favorite perfume?" I asked, hesitantly. She let out a long sigh, then gave a faint, bittersweet smile. "She wore that perfume all the time," she said. "She used to say it was the only thing people might remember about her, that if she wasn't pretty enough, not interesting enough, at least her scent would linger in someone's memory." Her words struck something deep inside me. It felt like a quiet ache, as if her daughter's soul still lingered, still hoping to be remembered, still waiting for someone, anyone, to truly acknowledge she had once been here. That night, I returned to the empty preparation room. In the corner of the table, my little bottle of perfume still sat, untouched. I picked it up, holding it tightly, my heart quietly pounding. This time I didn't spray it onto a body. I sprayed it gently onto the door, into the air, as if sending an unspoken message into the space between worlds. "I can smell your scent," I whispered. "And I will remember." I stood still, letting the fragrance fill the room. There was no fear, no guilt, only a soft, flowing peace. From that night on, the scent never returned. Not in the bathroom, not on my clothes, not in the elevator. Only the memory remained. A silent promise that someone, even if they once felt forgettable in life, would be remembered with tenderness. And for someone like me, a mortuary makeup artist, I've come to learn that the final act of honoring the dead isn't always about what we apply to their bodies, but about what we carry in our hearts. This is just one of many stories I've experienced during my time as a mortuary makeup artist. Over the years, I've come to realize every encounter with a silent body leaves its own kind of mark. There are still many stories left untold, some strange, some deeply moving, and some still difficult to explain, even now. But for now, I'll keep the rest to myself. I'll share them again when the time feels right. In this city, the funeral home where I work is often busy. Requests come not only from around town, but from distant villages and far-off places. I'm still young. Many say I learn quickly. But there are things no training or book can teach you. Things you only understand after spending enough time among the dead. That day, I was assigned to prepare the body of an elderly man from a remote village. He must have been over 80. His skin was dark, weathered, lined with deep creases that seemed to tell stories of their own. His body was thin, wrapped in a simple piece of traditional cloth. As always, I uncovered him gently, with care. But when I began to clean his face and mouth, I noticed something unusual. Tucked beneath his tongue was a small folded piece of paper. It was worn, slightly damp. On it were letters I didn't recognize. Ancient-looking script, like a spell or perhaps an old poem. I froze for a moment, unsure. Should I remove it? Something told me to ask. I went to speak with one of the senior staff, Mr. Herman, who had worked at the funeral home for decades. Softly, I told him what I had found. He gave me a faint, knowing smile. "It's not uncommon," he said. "Leave it. That's their business. Just respect it." I asked another colleague. The response was almost identical. "Don't touch it. Don't read it. Let it be." A part of me wanted to obey, but another part, a quiet curiosity, kept whispering, who placed it there? And why? In the end, I chose to follow their advice. I continued the preparation as usual, leaving the paper untouched. But from that moment on, something strange began to unfold. As I touched the man's face, a faint sound began to echo inside my head. It wasn't loud, more like a whisper, soft and steady, as if someone was silently reading in their mind. I paused for a moment and glanced around. The room was empty, just me and the body. I resumed my work, nervously, but the whisper didn't stop. It grew clearer, still in a language I couldn't understand. Sometimes it flowed like a poem, sometimes like a chant, and then something even stranger happened. As I began to work on his face and hands, my fingers moved with a strange confidence, too precise, too skilled. It felt like they weren't mine. I used techniques I had never learned, and the result was flawless, almost unnaturally perfect. But the unease inside me only grew stronger. Still, I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just in my head. Maybe I was imagining things. But that night, when I returned home, the whisper followed me. In the bathroom, in my bedroom. Even when I closed my eyes, the soft voice kept echoing. It wasn't just sound anymore. It felt like my thoughts were being dictated. There was a strange pressure, as if my mind was being steered by something else. Foreign sentences would surface, uninvited, unfamiliar. It felt like someone else was inside my head, holding the pen, writing line after line across the pages of my thoughts. I grew restless. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't eat in peace. Eventually, curiosity won. The next day, I returned to the preparation room. The old man's body had not yet been taken for burial. With a pounding heart, I lifted the cloth from his face once more. I gently opened his mouth and took out the small piece of paper. I sat in the corner of the room. Hands trembling, I slowly unfolded it. And with a hushed voice, I forced myself to read the old script written there. I couldn't understand all of it, but still, I read it aloud. The moment I finished, the air shifted. The room trembled, not like an earthquake, but as if the air itself had turned heavy, too dense to breathe. Regret hit me instantly. From that moment on, the voices grew louder, not just at home, but on the streets, in the elevator, inside my car. It felt like I was losing control, like something had latched onto me. Desperate, I turned to an old priest, a family acquaintance. He listened quietly, his face darkening. Then he spoke, softly. That wasn't just paper. It might have been a final message, or a binding spell, not meant to be opened, and never meant to be read without permission. I sobbed. Then, what should I do? He looked at me with gentle eyes. Rewrite what was written on that paper, by your own hand. Place it back under the tongue of the deceased, not as a ritual, but as a gesture of respect. Let him know you meant no harm. That night, with trembling hands, I sat down and rewrote the words. I didn't fully understand them, but I wrote each line with sincerity. I returned to the funeral home. In the stillness of the night, under dim lights, I gently uncovered the old man's face once more. Softly, I whispered, "Forgive me. I only wish to understand. I'm placing this back now." I slipped the paper beneath his tongue, just as it had been. Then I covered him again and made sure everything was neat and in place. That night, as I lay in bed and closed my eyes, a final voice echoed softly in my mind. Thank you for speaking for me. It was gentle, warm, and then it faded. From that moment on, my hands felt like my own again. The voices ceased, but the lesson remained. Now, whenever I receive a body, I examine it with care. And if there's a folded paper beneath the tongue, I will not touch it. I will not read it. Some messages are meant to exist beyond our understanding, because in the realm of the departed, not everything is meant for us to know, but everything deserves our respect.